you have OpenAI and ChatGPT models that are going to be incentivized not just to provide free answers, but actually recommend products and services. So I'm interested to see like how the model itself is going to change when you interact with it. Like right now, it'll recommend products and services to me when I ask it to. But I wonder if it's going to start doing that even when I don't ask it to. And it's going to start to be a little bit more forward looking in the way that it interacts with me and doesn't just answer the question I'm asking, but says, hey, have you considered this product? Have you considered this service? Like this would be like the way to permanently take care of this problem instead of just answering your one question today. Good morning and welcome to Market Outsiders. Today, by popular demand, we are talking about PayPal's integration into ChatGPT for e-commerce. Before we get there, if you have not yet rated, subscribed, or reviewed to Market Outsiders, please take a minute to do that. We really, really appreciate it. Jenny Ray, you've got some personal history in the payment space, so I'm sure you're very excited to dive into today's conversation.
Yeah, I cut my teeth in payments at times when the big folks were passing out, when Google Wallet wasn't a thing yet and Apple Wallet wasn't a thing. They were passing out $10 million signing bonuses. So it was kind of the craze about just over a decade ago that we're seeing in AI right now. And the sense was that payments were the holy grail. So the idea was that, you could build an e-commerce business, but it wasn't really going to create the ongoing generative cash flow that you really needed in order to focus there. Do you see what I did there with the generative? That's cute, right?
I did notice.
So, yeah,
The algorithm's going to love that.
the algorithm's going to love it so much. So anyhow, it was the microcosm of payments was an absolutely fascinating place to cut my teeth. It was why I moved out to California. It was my first big success in business. And I'm really excited today to talk about PayPal because I had meetings at PayPal HQ. We talked about the new generation of PayPal, about how PayPal would acquire users. And it was during that same time that Venmo was kind of just recently starting to remake peer-to-peer payments. And there have been a lot of developments. Stripe was nascent at the time. And so there are big players, like multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar valuation players in the space that are fascinating players that a lot of people, if they've never experienced the back end of e-commerce, have never actually seen. And so I'm really excited to talk about today because it actually seemed really obvious to me. And I thought that was a perfect reason to potentially put it on the menu. And then yesterday with user feedback who said, hey, we gave y'all the choice between talking about Argentina and talking about generative AI payments with PayPal. And I'm shocked because I thought Argentina would totally be the winner for that. But here we are. We're going to talk about OpenAI and PayPal's integration today.
So here's the state of play. Let's just start here with what's happening and then we'll get into the insights. So yesterday, PayPal announced a partnership with OpenAI that will allow consumers to complete e-commerce transactions through ChatGPT, like paying through PayPal. And so what this has done is it has unlocked a completely new e-commerce platform where PayPal, it seems like to me right now, is the exclusive payment gateway or payment provider. PayPal shares popped 10% on the news. PayPal also decided it was going to start offering a dividend for the first time. We'll talk about that later. I've got some thoughts there. But that's just what's happening in terms of like this tie-up between PayPal and OpenAI. It sounds like in the next 6 to 12 months, Jenny Ray, I'm going to be able to search for some kind of epoxy that I need for work I'm doing at home. And ChatGPT is going to say, hey, Home Depot offers it. Here's the product link. You can go ahead and check out right here through this chat without having to leave the ChatGPT ecosystem. Is that your understanding of what's happening as well?
Well, I think it may even be a little bit more native than that. And that's like part of the challenge of a lot of the players that have worked to build a retail relationship as an intermediary. I think ChatGPT is actually looking to build even more of an Amazon style platform where the products are not going to be held and warehoused like they would with Amazon, but you could actually purchase products themselves. And so retailers are going to be scrambling for space, and not just retailers like Home Depot that are supplying these things, but the actual suppliers of the epoxy in the first place, right? And so it will involve a potential remaking. I mean, this is a gold rush. AI is a gold rush. But if you're customers' eyes are in generative AI, you may not want to take them off of generative AI in order to transact, especially if generative AI as a sandbox is working really hard to defend their
Oh,
space. And
absolutely.
they're not going to want, so if you're like, hey, what I require is for them to come off platform, somebody else is going to come in and say, you know what, you could just check out right here.
And that's what I was saying, right? It's like
Yeah.
a partnership between, I'll use Home Depot as an example, where you can complete the Home Depot checkout natively inside of ChatGPT. But what I
Totally.
hear
But I'm
you
saying
saying is
even
that,
the
like,
epoxy manufacturer
even
may
the
be the one.
manufacturer itself, right? You might go direct to consumer in a way they've never had to before, never had the opportunity to before.
That's exactly right. And they may have been like, oh, we don't want to do the fulfillment. We don't want to do the compute, the consumer messaging, the consumer piece. And that's fine as long as everybody in their space stays exactly that way. But the dam breaks and one leaves and one epoxy is available on generative AI, they're going to find in their future charts that there are challenges inside their business. And
Mhm.
so this is really disrupting the kind of sandbox culture of come to my sandbox and play in my sandbox, and it's providing opportunities. So it's a huge threat, not just to other payment providers that were not included in this initial conversation, but certainly to the retailers that are currently
Yeah.
managing those customer relationships. And we've had conversations, Naman, about Macy's, what value they hold, about Home Depot, about Lowe's, about Walmart and Target. Like part of the question of those brands being a repository for product is really in play right now. And so this is, I think, the most significant threat to their businesses that has existed in probably the last 50 years.
If you don't have sticky customer relationships, you're under a threat. And that seems to be the mantra across sectors right now.
Or something that you like, Home Depot has lumber, right? Lumber is a moat for Home Depot, because it's still unlikely that through generative AI, I'm going to buy lumber. I don't need to. I'm not targeting a super tech savvy customer base. But you, Naman, epoxy guy, right, may be a disruptive category inside Home Depot. And, we talk all the time here about looking at category by category value. And so if you're diving out or carving out my highest performing categories that are not accommodating
Mhm.
for a big amount of foot traffic inside my store, but they're actually dropping profit to my bottom line, like chips at Home Depot, right?
Mhm.
Home Depot's sales of chips have to be higher than almost any grocery store in the nation. But like, I'm not buying chips if I don't walk into Home Depot. And so all of that other basket spend is going to go by the wayside.
And it's a variation of the Amazon playbook, because what Amazon did is they invited third-party sellers onto the platform. They looked at the data and they saw what was moving. They got insight into the margins because they offered warehousing services to these third-party sellers. And then they said, okay, great. You know what's high margin? Socks. So we're going to come out with Amazon Basic socks. Or we have our Amazon Basic of these certain items that we know are incredibly high margin and very popular. ChatGPT's got access to similar data because they know exactly what you're searching for. They know exactly like the buyer intent behind the conversations. So they have insight into kind of which relationships they should go pursue. They're not going to go manufacture socks themselves, but which supplier relationships they could go pursue. They can pit some of those suppliers and retailers against each other, right? And then I could see them start to offer, discounts or deals like to ChatGPT Plus members, just the way Amazon offers deals to Prime members. Like it's not difficult to see where this is going here over the next few years.
Well, I think that what you're talking about, again, is a remaking of the entire front end customer experience. And so then the question is, how do each of these players compete? So when I think of Amazon, their moat is Prime. It is a customer base that is so passionate about free shipping that they will literally pay anything in order to get free shipping. I don't see ChatGPT actually getting logistically to a place where they are offering a Prime-like membership.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
so, potentially though, that's like when I think about disrupting, you can disrupt at the edges, but when you're thinking about disrupting core, that's going to be one of the questions is how far does this go? When I think about a Walmart, I think like Walmart's growth area right now has been in third-party sellers. That's a potential disruptor, but you're
Mhm.
still not going to get your cucumbers that
Your
you're getting
milk.
today at Walmart through this, ChatGPT focus. And so it's going to be fringe until it's core, right? And I think that's kind of one of the key takeaways. So let's just talk a little bit about what this means for PayPal and why PayPal is the right partner for ChatGPT right now. When I first heard it, Naman, I don't know if you had this reaction, but I was like, seriously, PayPal? Like PayPal? Like I have a PayPal account, but I try not to use it whenever I can. PayPal, I feel like, is kind of like the Microsoft of the payments industry. Like every great payments company that you love that then goes through the PayPal ringer gets worse when it's added, into the UX experience. I get calls from PayPal from a user acquisition standpoint. We use PayPal because we have to for many international purchases. They only account for about 3% of our total transactions in my business. Right now, I don't use PayPal at all in the winery. Like it's just kind of like a core, but not necessary, payments provider when it's integrated fully in a singular platform. But PayPal actually has most likely the broadest reach of customer accounts and the most seamless transaction when you're trying to integrate across multiple different players. And so I'm not super surprised that PayPal was the processor here. When I was thinking about it, I was like, Stripe isn't really it because ChatGPT isn't building its own native
E-commerce
platform.
platform.
It's not building the e-commerce platform. So payments and e-commerce with PayPal are able to stay separate, whereas Stripe's value proposition is that they're able to go native. And this is not necessarily going to be the key focus of this. So I had that like initial moment of really, it kind of felt like the only way to get to your new favorite airport was on Spirit Airlines. But, I think PayPal is I don't know, maybe people love Spirit, but I'm showing my biases here. So here's the kind of thing, right? PayPal shares surge on the deal. So that means something. If the market is saying like, we think that this deal is big, it's not just hype. Somebody's been running the numbers on this. This question of can you transact on ChatGPT and using OpenAI's platform has been a looming question, I would say, for longer than it's taken ChatGPT to solve for it. The profit forecast lifted. Like anytime you're running throughput for PayPal, this is just a like higher transaction volume play, and that's going to result in profit. But
there you go. I just wanted to clarify that for folks listening who aren't familiar with the business model. PayPal takes a transaction fee for every transaction that it processes, and that's why shares pop. So if you're not familiar with the business model, if you never thought about payments before, I wanted to make sure that was super clear. Otherwise, you might be thinking, okay, why did shares pop 10%?
Totally. And that it's not always as simple as that. Sometimes PayPal's doing a restructuring. Sometimes they're increasing the fees that they're charging merchants. Sometimes they add a new way to check out. Sometimes they, minimize American Express, which is a more expensive transaction for them. And there are like certainly, big plays, but this one is really straightforward. It's just more people checking out means more money for PayPal.
And I'd argue the dividend might have a little bit to do with that share price pop as well, and we'll get there. But I want to talk about the business implications first.
Good. Awesome. So yeah, let's dive into that. I mean, Naman, the dividend, first of all, if you announce this and you announce a dividend, that's a little bit, I mean, that's bullish.
I would have saved that news for like next quarter,
It's kind of dangerous because you haven't realized $1 from the deal so far. So your share price just appreciated, but you don't pay dividends based on share price appreciation. You pay dividends based on your cash flow and profit. And so, basically they're saying these forecasts are super real. So they had to be sitting on enough of a cash boon, and they must be looking at their future acquisition pipeline and thinking like, we don't need this cash. And so, let's talk a little bit about that dividend and what you think that means and what you might have done differently if you were in PayPal leadership.
Well, I'll say this. Aswat Damodaran, who's a professor at NYU Stern, he's a professor of finance. He has this concept of like company life cycles, and he likens the life cycle of a company to the life cycle of a human being. So you have like child companies, you have adult companies and you have companies that move into maturity, like they move into older age. And when I hear that a company is starting to offer a dividend, I think of his framework and I think, oh, this company recognizes it's moving into older age. Because I think when a company starts to offer a dividend, what it's signaling is like we have different priorities for our cash. So we're no longer like thinking about reinvesting all of our much of our cash flow into future growth. We're starting to think about how we return it to shareholders. It just signals a different strategic priority, like a different discipline from the management team. And you have to know what you're getting into as an observer of the business and as a potential investor of the business. When a company starts to offer a dividend, they're signaling to you that they feel like they're in a different stage of their growth and their maturity. At least it's a signal to me. And I'm a little bit surprised that they decided to offer a dividend instead of just buying back shares. And I don't know, like, kind of what the like percentage of shares outstanding is for PayPal. Maybe their share price is so appreciated that it's not a good time to buy back stock. I find when I kind of just observe markets and I watch what CFOs do, they always seem to buy their own stock at the top. And so maybe PayPal's like, hey, look, like this is not like the right time for us to be buying back stock. So what's another way we can return capital to shareholders? It's a dividend, right? Like I'm sure these conversations happened at the senior leadership level, but the big insight for me was, oh, PayPal itself is signaling that they're moving into a new phase of their growth. Because if they saw that there were like more organic growth opportunities or even inorganic growth opportunities on the table, they wouldn't be returning this capital to shareholders in this way. And so I think like for me, I'd be expecting like more muted growth into the future. Like that to me is really the big insight here is like you are taking cash off the table, you're returning it to me. That just means that you can't find a better way to deploy it. And if you can't find a better way to deploy it, then my assumption is going to be that your growth trajectory is going to slow into the future. And this is a tacit acknowledgement of the same.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I think like if you think about that as an investor, one of my grandmother's rules was buy dividend paying stocks, especially durable dividend paying stocks, because if they always pay a dividend, then you have an income plan for later in your life. And her, financial strategy was never sell the stock. And so stock appreciation really didn't mean anything to her. At some point, the only thing that meant anything was the income that was being put off of those stocks. But you're exactly right, Naman. I mean, fundamentally, the business is saying two things simultaneously. One is that we are in a less risky phase of our business. Yeah. And so we do not have to reward that risk with stock price appreciation because otherwise we're asking you to take on risk by investing this capital in something. And therefore, we think our stock price will appreciate. Like, just stick with us. And so there's a sense of adventure that comes in that phase of the business, but there is also a sense of permanence that comes when companies issue dividends. Right, like PayPal is effectively saying we're going to be around forever. We will be around forever. We will. There is no reason for us to hedge our bets with the cash that we've been holding, and it is a pretty fascinating time. I think it says here, 27 years. The business has been operating for 27 years without paying a dividend, and so the first quarterly dividend coming on the on the day of this same news is a pretty fascinating move. But like you said, I think I probably would have waited just another quarter to realize it. But obviously, you don't strike the deal, which they've been working on for months, by the way, and issue the dividend. You didn't wake up yesterday and think like, hey, let's do dividends. This has been on the table for probably 5 to 10 years. And what you can actually see in here, and this is, I think, that the call out that I wanted to make is that the OpenAI deal pop shares 10%, which is a significant pop. But actually, that's not why the dividend is coming out. It's this right here, right? Banking on resilient consumer spending. And we have been talking about this from the beginning of this year. It is the least popular thing to say. We do not get invited onto, CNBC's podcast to talk about the fact that consumers don't suck and they're still buying stuff. But consumers this year, in light of cost increases, challenging inflationary environments, have demonstrated that they still want to buy stuff. It's going to be a great holiday season. And because of that, because of credit card receipts and because of the jobs report and other things that we flag when we're looking at the economy overall, that's why they issued the dividend. It wasn't the OpenAI news. So I think it's really important for you to understand that like it would be financially irresponsible to announce forward-looking news like this and a dividend at the same time if you didn't believe that the fundamentals of your business for years had already supported it.
If you run a small or medium-sized business, you know how fast cyber risks are evolving. That's why I use Nord products myself. And for businesses, there's Nord Stellar. It's a threat exposure management platform that helps you spot cyber threats before they become full-blown incidents. Nord Stellar combines data breach and dark web monitoring, attack surface management, and cyber squatting protection, all in one platform. It gives you real-time visibility into leaked credentials, exposed assets, and impersonation attempts so you can act before attackers do. Think of it as seeing what hackers see and fixing it first. Right now, Nord Stellar has an exclusive Black Friday offer. Unlock 20% off with code BLACKFRIDAY20, but only until December 10th, 2025. Visit nordstellar.com/simplified to secure your business today.
One of the things that strikes me as you're sharing this article is the daily active users of ChatGPT. Is that what I'm seeing there?
Which ones?
So if you get down to the next
Oh
paragraph
yeah, the
here,
800 million.
that just is a weekly active users,
They
800
call it
million.
weekly.
It just blows my mind, right? So this is like a captive audience, right? They're searching for and asking questions to solve their problems. Often it's a product or service that will solve their problem. And so now you don't just have this like captive audience that's looking for their problem to be solved, but you have OpenAI and ChatGPT models that are going to be incentivized not just to provide free answers, but actually recommend products and services. So I'm interested to see like how the model itself is going to change when you interact with it. Like right now, it'll recommend products and services to me when I ask it to. But I wonder if it's going to start doing that even when I don't ask it to. And it's going to start to be a little bit more forward looking in the way that it interacts with me and doesn't just answer the question I'm asking, but says, hey, have you considered this product? Have you considered this service? Like this would be like the way to permanently take care of this problem instead of just answering your one question today. Or this might be the implication of this question that you're asking. Why don't you just go ahead and invest in this product now so that you don't feel this potential future pain? Like I'm interested to see like how the model is trained differently because its incentives are changing. And that I don't want to have an ethical conversation today, to be honest with you. And I don't necessarily know kind of like what the guardrails are that OpenAI is putting up in regards to that. But it's just going to be interesting to see how your interactions with ChatGPT change because its incentives are going to be different now.
Let's not actually talk about the ethical side. Let's just talk about the fundamental business side. OpenAI and ChatGPT actually have a remarkably simple business structure right now. Can you just talk about how they make money and what the options would be on the table for how they make money? Because we already talked about how PayPal is going to make money on this deal, right? Transaction volume will increase. Each of those transactions result in a percent cut, that percent that you hate to pay for credit card transactions when you're a merchant. But it's kind of just a part of doing business. And I did work with Taco Bell really early in my career. And Taco Bell at the time was cash only. And they began to allow debit cards, and that was debit cards are kind of like the dumbest move in merchant acquisition because you're basically saying you can use a credit card but the one that you never use, right? And so we did some analysis for them and it was like, look, you're gonna have to pay 3% on the merchant fees, but what do you get in terms of revenue uplift? Like think about the right things here. And so they paid the 3% and it was like a 38% uplift, right? So instead of buying just my taco with the change that I had inside my car, I now bought the taco box and the drink and like everything else that I wanted. And I brought, I brought some for my coworkers, and it was astonishing how they kind of like didn't get it initially, and then once they got it, and it was like, this is really early 2000s, but still pretty wild that a lot of drive-through businesses were still cash only, and that was why Starbucks's app was such an innovation, because they were actually capturing not just the merchant use, but they were capturing prepaid volume on the platform. So anyhow, can you just talk about generative AI's business model right now, and if it stays the same, what do they get? If it changes, how might it change?
So here's my like 30-second, like second grade overview. And we did like a full deep dive episode on this, I'm pretty sure. So we'll link to that in the show notes. But, and I'm going to talk about OpenAI specifically because you have like different kind of generative AI companies and models who have different models, different business models. So
Yes.
for OpenAI specifically, it's a simple subscription. So you pay X dollars a month for access and it's just recurring revenue. And then they also have tie-ups with businesses to embed kind of their AI capabilities into like different business tools or like business suite of products. Like for example, like it's the OpenAI model like that underpins the Microsoft's Copilot. And so like there's like a kind of like a licensing relationship and fee there that Microsoft is paying OpenAI to then like underpin its own like AI offerings, right? That's one of the reasons Microsoft took an equity stake in OpenAI so that they could have access to that kind of technology. And so you have like the business to business application. That's actually really what Perplexity's leaning into. That's like I'm going to be interested to see kind of like how they grow and how durable their business is versus OpenAI. Like I'm actually betting on Perplexity versus OpenAI because they're pursuing the business application. They're pursuing more of the B2B model versus OpenAI, which has some of that, but a lot of it is just consumers paying a monthly subscription to get access to the latest and the greatest model and to get unlimited access to it. That's like the very simple explanation of how they're making money right now.
Totally. So just so everybody's clear, OpenAI fundamentally is a consumer SaaS business. And what this doesn't say is that, you know, a lot of what they've tried to do is that they're a freemium business. It's really simple pricing, actually. But out of this 800 million weekly active users, I don't think that they've made public how many of them are paid. Right. And so it is still a pretty small percentage, but part of their moat that they've been working to build in the space, which is, I think moats in AI are not super durable because they were able to build this one really quickly. But their moat is the volume of searching that people are doing on OpenAI, which is training the model faster than any other models are getting trained right now. And so that kind of very simple freemium model, having a ton of free users, and then, you know, capturing some of them in terms of revenue. The revenue piece of it has never been the major driver of OpenAI.
I mean, they're in user acquisition phase right now.
Yes,
and so that's
100%.
the primary metric. But what this news allows them to do is diversify their revenue streams. Because now if you're going to take a cut of a transaction that happens on your platform, well, then even if I'm not paying the $20 a month, if I'm going to buy something through ChatGPT, well, now you've monetized me. Right. So now you're not just using me to train your model, but there's actually dollars that you're generating from my interactions with you that you were not generating before. And so it's going to increase your revenue per user, if you will, and diversify the revenue streams that OpenAI can take advantage of. And they absolutely need that because of this massive infrastructure build out that they're undertaking. They need trillions of dollars in capital. And so like every single dollar that they're generating right now is going right back into the business. That's one of the reasons I think they're preparing for an IPO in the next 12 to 18 months. Like they need massive capital infusion. And so this is going to be kind of one revenue stream that helps them get there.
So, Naman, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think you've mentioned, right, you know, you have this growth in a user base, which has been pretty organic. This PayPal transaction may drive a little bit of that. You may have more users or more eyes or more paid users if you're offering more on the platform. That's just been generally OpenAI's view, is that the more that you offer and the better that it gets, the more likely people are willing to pay for access because they're using it frequently enough or they're getting cut off from the free version and then they need to start to pay. So it's kind of becoming a core part of business decision making. So that's revenue number one. Revenue number two is potentially taking a cut like PayPal would. It's also possible that they're not going to take a cut. You want to talk about the third one, the Google Holy Grail? What's the third kind of big?
It's advertising.
Totally. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's that going to look like potentially on ChatGPT?
Who knows? Right. But maybe, you know, for example, like I'll go back to my dumb epoxy example. Maybe I asked ChatGPT a question around like which epoxy I should use for a particular use case. And it gives me an answer. And then it says, here are some products that fit your use case. The first one is a sponsored answer. It's a sponsored listing. Right. And so like that is the gold mine. I think that's one of the reasons when ChatGPT was released, like Alphabet stock such took such a hit, because people could start to see like around the corner and say, oh, like
This
this could
moment, right?
massively disrupt not just the search business, but the paid search business. And it's going to be interesting to see like which direction they go. And maybe they're actually big enough to do both. Like they can take a cut of a transaction that happens on their platform. They can also offer sponsored answers or sponsored listings and have their cake and eat it too. But you're right. That's the holy grail. And that's probably the biggest pot of revenue that's sitting there on the table for them.
And you could even imagine if you take other businesses that are in this space, there'll be choices for them to make, but you could imagine a Netflix style disruptor. If Netflix's current moat is that they are creating high quality content that's native
And a lot of it
on the Netflix platform, and a lot of it, and they've kept their user interface incredibly simple. But Netflix does have an ad-supported segment. Netflix is going after sports. Like, what if ChatGPT is actually the sponsor of the next World Cup or the Olympics, and you're watching those there, and then all of a sudden you have those advertising partners locked up? Think about, some of the disruption in the media space that's also possible here. Think about what you might do if you had different tiered spending. So you had that ad-supported tier, and then you also have another kind of more premium tier, right? You could think of them as kind of separating out the people who are getting maybe notified with ads versus people who are getting ads only by selection. So you think about the Facebook model, right? Facebook initially thought about letting people opt out of ads. That was kind of, do you remember that, Naman, when they came out with that? It was like, there was a very short window of time when you could pay a premium to opt out of Facebook ads, and they sunset it super, super quickly because they
that
realized
wasn't a good idea.
No, because they realized like there's no way that my $20 a month was going to be worth less or worth more than somebody else paying to come after me for $20 a month, right? So that $200 a month that they could make off of me as a viewer was going to be significantly more than what I was willing to pay. And so I think there could be disruptions not just to players in the industry, but also actually to OpenAI's current operating model and the way that they're thinking about their user acquisition and usage driving on the platform.
So in summary, it seems like we're in favor of this deal for PayPal. We're in favor of this deal for OpenAI. It makes a lot of sense. The rollout is scheduled for, is it 2026 or 2027? Does the article say?
I think it's sooner. I think it's 2026.
2026.
But let me see if I can pop down there. This is all about PayPal. Y'all should read this. If you don't understand PayPal's business, it's pretty important. I feel like it was in 2026, but I don't think this article specifically says it. So yeah, maybe we'll see if we can pop another article in there for y'all.
So coming to an AI model near you, e-commerce and shopping. So doesn't sound like it's going to be in time for this holiday shopping season, but at some point in the next few months, you'll be able to natively check out through ChatGPT. I, for one, am excited. Like I'm all for less clicks. I'm all for like a frictionless experience. I think one of my, like as a consumer, one of my hangups initially is just going to be, are you actually recommending to me the product that I need? And like, are you going to go as far as like sourcing reviews for me? Right. Because that's one of the things that I do is I read a lot of reviews. I make sure that the SKUs or the product ID like actually matches what I'm looking for. And I don't know if initially I'm going to have the trust in the AI that it's done all that diligence for me. Like I'm going to want to double check it. But like once it builds that trust with me, then there's no reason for me ever to go anywhere else.
So here's the thing. The only reason that I can think of right now, and maybe this is disruptible in the future, is that part of why Amazon is moated in the space is because of Prime. Because I know that when I get something, I can send it back to Amazon, and Amazon is going to handle the customer interface. And yeah, sure. My son asked me last week if we could just call Amazon and see why a package was late. I was like, son, that's adorable. No, right? That's not how we handle things with Amazon. Like we don't talk to them. That's not what we do. But there is a really significant user interface from a fulfillment side that is set out. So if ChatGPT decides to move in that direction, that's one thing. But like you said, ChatGPT could just be like, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to sell you something. And it's possible it's totally fake.
Yeah.
And so there is like a merchant risk associated for ChatGPT and for the users that's going to have to get kind of like ironed out in the fire. You're probably going to be an earlier user of this than I will. I'm going to still go through my old trusted buds, for a little while. And so we'll probably have to revisit this conversation in 3 to 6 months. But yeah, I do think that there is some potential challenge.
That might be why when they start this, they roll out, instead of going straight to manufacturers, they start with retailers that already have some of that trust and who have done some of that vetting and due diligence for them before you start moving into what I'll call
And to
third-party
handle
sellers.
fulfillment, right? If I buy something from ChatGPT, like ChatGPT has to get it to me somehow. And so it also might be like very emphasized on digital products or services. Initially, it might be like a Canva style platform where I can buy stuff that's really easy to fulfill via email, that has very low refund percentages, that doesn't have a ton of review orientation or customer information. It might be actually pretty low dollar to begin with as well. So when you think about the categories that this might disrupt earlier, I'd encourage you to really think strategically through that. If you enjoyed this conversation, I don't think we even said at the beginning, but we love it when y'all subscribe. It's great to get to know you. We have people that have been following along. We've loved meeting you in person. We've loved talking about your lives. We've loved you telling us about your favorite episodes. So please subscribe to this channel. Make sure that you're sharing this. And we always enjoy your reviews and your ideas for upcoming episodes. So we're looking forward to having you back for a future episode of Market Outsiders. Thanks so much.